afternoon. Okay. Well, my name is Missy Lewick. I am the Director of Planning for the Record. And before us today is a discussion on Islander mixed-use text amendment. What is before you today, as the Planning Commission took action on this particular text amendment last December. The text amendment has moved through the public review process, and what's before you today are the deviations to that text amendment since you held your public hearing in December of 2022. So the presentation, first we'll cover what's before you as your recommendation. You're to review and make a recommendation on those deviations, and that recommendation goes to Town Council.
Point of information, Mr. Chairman. Missy, you made a comment about a public hearing. Is this a public hearing, or is this, what's the difference? Not a public hearing.
This is not a public hearing. This is a public meeting. A public hearing has the required advanced 30 days notice and an advertisement, a legal advertisement in the newspaper.
Okay, thank you.
So this request for the text amendment was made by Josh Tiller of J.K. Tiller and Associates and his team. They are here in the audience today. It's a text amendment to allow for a new use to be established called Islander mixed use within the Sea Pine Circle District, establish a definition for that use, establish use-specific conditions and exceptions to the development form standards. The text amendment includes amendments to the 4 sections that are identified on the screen. It is an amendment to 16.3-105M Sea Pine Circle District, 16.4-102A Principal Uses, 16.4-102B Use Specific Conditions, and 16.10-103A Use Classifications, Use Types, and Definitions. So this amendment has gone through a public process to date. The initial request was received in July of 2022. There were some initial discussions held with the Planning Commission back in August of 22. Back at that time, the Planning Commission had a subcommittee structure. The LMO committee reviewed the amendment set on both September 1 and November 1 of 2022 and made a recommendation to move it to the full Planning Commission at that meeting in November. Then the Planning Commission held a public hearing on December 21st. And at that time, they moved that this text amendment be recommended for approval to Town Council. From there, it went to the Public Planning Committee, which is a subcommittee of Town Council, and action was deferred until there was further information brought forward. Then the Planning Committee met again in June of 2023 and voted to move it forward to Town Council without a recommendation of approval or denial. Then Town Council met twice and considered the amendment further, and it was last before Council on August 15th. And what you have in your agenda packet today is a comparison of where the amendment stands as of the action that was taken by Council on August 15th compared to what the Planning Commission reviewed at their public hearing in December of 2022. So again, before you today, Planning Commission is going to review those deviations or changes to the proposal that have occurred since this proposal left the Planning Commission. In the text amendment procedure in section 16.2, it states that if there are proposed changes or departures from the text amendment that is different than what was reviewed by the Planning Commission, then those changes or departures shall be submitted to the Planning Commission for review and recommendation in accordance with state law. So now we're going to focus on, and again, I hope you had a chance to look at the lengthy staff report and all of the attachments that were in the packet. And attachment number 3, attachment number 1 is the Planning Commission of December 22 text amendment version, and attachment number 3 is the August 15th Town Council text amendment version. So really, we're comparing and contrasting between the two text amendment versions. I'll say if you did compare to those, at the time that this amendment set went to the Planning Commission, the biggest difference is in the use-specific conditions. There were 3 use-specific conditions back in December. Now there are 11. And so we're just going to go through what those changes are, and then we're going to go through what the current text amendment language is as proposed today. So in December, it included an undefined density. There is no change to that particular portion of the text amendment. So in the development form standards section, it's still, the ordinance or the proposed amendment still has an undefined density. These 3 use-specific conditions also have had no changes since December of 2022. The first condition that has not changed is the condition that Islander mixed-use development shall designate parking spaces for use by the residential units, and the parking spaces designated for residential use are eligible to be included as part of a shared parking plan, meeting the requirements in 16.5107H3, which are existing shared parking regulations that are in the code today. The second condition that has not changed is that Islander mixed-use development must be on property which is within 500 feet, measured at the nearest property line to property line of education uses. And the third condition that has not changed is that Islander mixed use shall not be a short-term rental property as defined in the municipal code, section 10-2-20, subsection 6. So now we're going to start to talk about what has changed. The definition for the use has changed slightly, and we will go through those changes. In December of 2022, the definition included, you see my cursor? It included Islander mixed use and one or more office uses. It also included a group living dormitory component in the definition, and that part was removed. Okay. So this is the current definition that's proposed for Islander mixed use. And I'm going to go through the set that fully pulls together what is before you today. I just want to point out the change here in the definitions. So there are a number of use-specific conditions that have been added to the text amendment since it was last before this body. The first one that was added relates to shared parking. Islander mixed use may utilize shared parking on education use property if the development provides student housing and for so long as the property is used for education use. And the shared parking on education use property is limited to 75 parking spaces. The next use-specific condition is related to the workforce housing component. All of this was added. It includes now a use-specific condition that requires that 20% of the Islander mixed-use units shall be workforce housing units, excluding any units for student housing, for households earning up to 120% of the area median income for the town's workforce housing agreement requirements, and that rental workforce housing units, excluding the student housing units for USCB, shall remain subject to workforce housing requirements in the town's workforce housing agreement for a minimum of 15 years from the date of the initial certificate of occupancy for the completion of construction of the last workforce housing units, as evidenced by restrictive covenants or other compliant documents recorded in the Office of Beaufort County Register of Deeds. There's also another condition that was added related to unit size. There is a minimum average unit size of 750 square feet per dwelling unit that is required. The minimum average unit size is calculated by taking the building's total gross floor area without commercial uses, less than non-habitable areas like hallways and lobbies, divided by the total number of dwelling units. Yes?
Are these specific conditions that were approved by the town council?
Yes.
August?
Yes. Another added condition is that the Islander mixed use shall not exceed a floor area ratio of 0.68, and that Islander mixed use shall not exceed a site coverage index of 50%, Site coverage index is defined as the percentage of lot coverage by the building's footprint square footage. And also that Islander mixed use shall have a 10% functional open space requirement or common amenity space that's accessible to the residents. This designated area must offer outdoor, active, or passive recreational and gathering spaces for the use of the residents. Also added was an Islander mixed-use adjacent street setback that shall meet or exceed an average of 35 feet or the minimum setback distance required for the setback table, whichever is greater. And the Islander mixed-use shall require a 4-bedroom per dwelling unit maximum. And I know all of those changes sound like a lot. I hope that you were able to look through the staff report to understand some of the basis for some of those changes. And one of the key changes that was removed from the ordinance, when I went to the Planning Commission, it was recommended for approval by this body with an exception to the height for the maximum building height of 55 feet, and that has been removed. And so that is no longer part of the proposal. So now, again, I don't want to go through all of these again, but as one text amendment set now, the proposal before you is as it is included here in attachment 3, which is the text amendment set based on the action last August by council. It includes this use definition. It includes 11 use-specific conditions that we just went through. And they're also listed here again. And again, before you is to go through all of these deviations. I can certainly go through questions as to what some of these use-specific conditions, purpose and intent were, and certainly can answer questions about that. I know that the applicant is here as well. If you have any questions that pertain to the applicant side of this, we can also go through those. So at this point, I'll turn it over to the commission if you have any questions about any of these deviations or changes.
Yes, before we enter into discussion, Karen, you have an announcement to make about 2 of our commissioners.
Yes, sir. Mr. Hens and Mr. Campbell will recuse themselves and leave the dais for this presentation.
Gentlemen, excuse yourselves, just stay in the audience, but not on the dais for a short period of time. Thank you. Okay, we're going to have some commission discussion on that presentation and some questions before we open it up to public comment. We'll start with Commissioner D'Arienzo.
I see that the height restriction was removed. What was the reason for removing the height? And is there any restriction at all on height?
Yeah, the height limit for the Sea Pine Circle District is 45 feet, and this use would have to meet the height limit for the district, just like all the other uses.
That's it? Okay. Commissioner Mueller.
My question was the 55 foot and also the setback. So they're adhering to the setback of 35, which is broader than the average setback. Is that the right interpretation of that?
It depends on, that's for the adjacent street setback. If they're adjacent to another street, which Office Way is, then it's a greater setback than what's required. If they're on a major or minor arterial, then those setbacks are greater than 35 feet, so the required setback would apply. So it depends on where the use is going to be located. It may be a greater setback than what's required.
Also, Commissioner Whaley, any questions or comments?
Thank you for the education uses, because I know that was specific to it. So when we talk about education uses, there was some, I was not here the last time, I'm a newbie to all this, so the commissioner greatly encouraged us to look at the last video, and I did that. I did some homework, and so I'm just trying to understand, is the setback, that 500 feet or whatever it's called, it's not a setback, is it? It's just a definition for education use.
It is location-specific criteria for eligibility for this use that's based on a proximity from an education use.
So all those properties that adjoin it, that's set in that 500, that the issue was raised for, they would have to meet this, I think it's a South Carolina definition of what an education use is, to be able to participate in this mixed-use district. Is that correct?
Yeah, the definition for education use is defined in our code, so it's in chapters.
town code?
In the town's land management ordinance in 1610-103. You requested that definition, sent it to you in advance. I can certainly read that for the rest of the commission if you would like.
No, I don't need it.
Okay.
I read it. I guess the other question I have is, since it's a town ordinance, does South Carolina law take any position on what's defined as an education use? You're aware of? If you're not aware, I don't really care. Just curious.
I don't know that I am qualified to answer that question.
Last question. So is it fair to say the developer went from 3 changes to 11 at this point? That developer is amenable to the things the town council asked for? There's no pushback?
I would rather the applicant speak to that, but the applicant's been part of this amendment process throughout the public review
fair.
process. But they could speak to that more definitively.
Okay, thank you. That's all. Thank you, Chairman.
Commissioner Dubois,
No questions, thank you.
Vice Chair O'Neill?
No questions.
Okay, we're good. Now would this be an appropriate time to ask the developer to come forward to answer that other question? Mr. Tiller?
Sure.
Have the question in mind?
Hi, I'm Josh Tiller of J.K. Tiller Associates. I'm representing the property owner. I know there's a lot of new faces here, and we'd be happy to maybe walk you through the plan for the property if that's appropriate. If not, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Does anybody need to see the full-blown plan again?
I did review it after you sent me the
Yes.
homework
I think everyone has studied it. We were focusing today on the deviations from the last time we approved that. So, I think Commissioner Whaley's comment is the developer amenable to the changes as currently proposed?
Yeah, based on what was approved by town council back in August, we're okay with all those changes as written.
That helps. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I see that there was a traffic study that was conducted last year sometime. That traffic study completed and incorporated into your proposal?
I mean, it was based on, correct, it's based on our proposed plan, that traffic study, correct.
I do recall that town council asked for, somebody on town council asked for right turn only, might have been the mayor. That's something that's being pursued or is being considered?
I know it was considered, and I think we're okay with that right-hand turn. So I don't think it was part of that approved motion of council, but we'd certainly be open to that.
Any other commissioner questions or comments? Thank you, Mr. Tiller.
Thank you.
In that case, this would be a time for public comment on this topic. If you choose to address us on this, would you come forward to the podium, state your name for the record? Yes, Sean.
I'm sorry to jump in, Mr. Chairman. Sean Colgan, Assistant Town Manager. Because we're asking for the commission for action on the deviations that have occurred since the public hearing, I think it sounds like the commission, and I came in a minute late from my other meeting, it doesn't sound like the commission has had any objections to the deviations at this point, but I think it'd be appropriate to take a motion, to have a motion on the floor, so that then you could field public comment and then know if they know what your action you're considering before they make comment. And I think that would be a better dynamic. I don't know if there's any benefit of just pulling up the deviations and to say if there's any change to anything that's been presented, but we can go through them real quickly one by one. And if there's no change, so if there aren't, then I would say that I would ask that the commission consider a recommendation to accept the changes that have been made at the council level that have deviated from what was before the planning commission in December.
Okay.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, Commissioner Whaley moves that
Yes.
we
Make a motion in accordance with the guidance we were
that
given.
we're accepting and recommending a continuation to town council of the 11 variations. Go ahead, Missy.
We have to actually, a point of information, do we have to vote on each deviation or we can take them as a package?
We could go through each deviation again to find out on each one where the planning commission stands on each change or deviation. Again, before you, the recommendation is that you review and make recommendation to town council on the deviations. So that would be part of your motion.
Okay, so I'll make I'm sorry.
Beth, please.
Well, I guess, point of question on that is, so after each deviation, is that where public comment comes on? Or could we do a motion to accept all changes from December 2022 to the approval of town council August 2023?
Yeah, I'll try to be clear. If the commission does not object to the deviations and they have a recommendation to accept all that were part of your packet, then I'd ask for a motion to accept all as provided to you in the staff report. Hear from the public. I'm sure there's going to be additional questions, and we're going to be up there probably answering some questions on the deviations and maybe other things that are being asked. But I think it's clear that then be clear to the community to know what your position is so that then they can make feedback, provide you feedback to help you know if you want to continue with that action for a vote.
Okay, I'll continue with my motion if that's okay, Chairman.
Is there a second?
Oh, I didn't make the, anyway. My motion is to accept the town council's recommendation without condition as presented by town staff with the packet of 11. Is that sufficient enough statement? Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. So before we act on that, now we will open it up to public comment. If you would
Excuse me,
like to-
Chairman? Who
Yes,
seconded? We couldn't hear.
Commissioner Mueller,
Sorry.
if you choose to address us, come to the podium for the microphone, state your name for the record, and understand that you're limited to 3 minutes. Yes, sir, please come forward.
Hey, Mark, how you doing? Eric Somerville, Meadow Bay Marina Village. This has been a tedious time of activities trying to get all these details out. I have to admit my background is in the federal government, and there's two ways they don't tell you something. One is they don't tell you, or they make it so complicated it's hard to understand. And this has gone into the level of hard to understand, but I'm sure that Missy understands it all, and Sean understands it all, and the council already voted in a positive way. So this feels like a lot of a motion of activities that lead me to say the important thing here is the project, which will provide housing and solve a lot of, make a dent in solving some of the issues and the problems, whether it's 44 feet or 46 feet. I don't give a damn about that. I just would like to get the thing done. It's been going on and on. Only workforce housing overall, I mean, it's just been a horror show for such a long time. Consultant after consultant after consultant, and this thing is still moping along. I don't know how precise it has to be, but I will say one thing to be a little bit humorous. I found the floor area ratios a little complicated to understand, and I'm not going to claim that I do, but in the federal government, FAR stood for Federal Acquisition Regulations, and that was a telephone book size of information. So far, I've only hit 412 pages on the last document that went out that I had to read, and I wasn't sure if it was mixed use or text amendment or what we were calling it, or still calling it Office Parkway. An X amount of citizens like me return to meeting after meeting after meeting, hear the same thing over again. And then it seems like some of you are still lost. But anyhow, I encourage you to please vote yes for the approval.
Thank you, Mr. Somerville.
Thank you.
Other speakers? Aaron, are you timing for us? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, commission members. Just like you, I'm a volunteer. But unlike Ms. Somerville, my name is Xiaodan Li. I'm a Hilton Head resident. Unlike Mr. Eric Somerville, I actually participated in town council meetings and subcommittee meetings for the last 4 months. So I understood exactly what's in your packet. And I just want to say, please support this private effort to provide housing for local employers and also to revitalize the dilapidated areas that's been there for more than a decade. And then also provide school student housing that the town invested more than $20 million that's been sitting there empty for the last 3 years. So the only reason that the private investor developer, they have to come to town council for approval is because they want to provide 1 to 3 units, family-friendly housing for the local employers. As you know, Sea Pines Circle District it's already zoned in 2014 as a commercial mixed-use district. And the only reason that he cannot build those dormitory-style housing is because he wants to satisfy some local employers that they would want to accommodate families with young kids instead of cramming everybody in a 1-bedroom with 12 people. So that is the only reason that he came to the town council for approval. And the commission before you approved this amendment unanimously. And all the changes is reflecting the request from the town staff and town council, not at the will of the developer. So this process has been stalled and come to deliberation multiple times. So I share Mr. Somerville's frustration. But if you look at the merit of the project itself, the design standards, all the changes they're making is far better than the requirements in the existing LMO for Sea Pines Circle districts. But the benefits is tremendous for our town residents. So I urge you, please, to approve this project because I know inside out what this project entails. And I can say, please, as a resident, support this. Thank you.
For your comment. Other citizens who wish to speak? Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon. My name is Melinda Tunner, and I live at 20 Lenox Lane in Palmetto Hall. And I'm here to ask for your support of the text amendment that was approved at the 8:15 Town Council meeting. The text amendment is a creative approach to find a mutually beneficial solution to redevelop that dilapidated land, which can benefit the town. And there are many benefits. Number one, it provides a lifeline to USCB through dorms. We want that $21 million investment in the university to pay off through educating students. Number two, it's a lower density of bedrooms and residents than the current by rights LMO, not only for this property, but the entire Sea Pines Circle District, and lower potential traffic than the current by rights LMO. Number three, it provides more net new workforce housing in the marketplace faster than the town's public solution. 20% of the units are locked in for 15 years for workers with an AMI of up to 120%. And we didn't need to invest $600,000 like the proposal that was reviewed yesterday from the CCDC. Number five, no short-term rentals. And number four, no short-term rentals. And number five, no taxpayer dollars needed. The town staff, council, and committee members such as yourself and the developer have been working hard to iron out these points. And it was exciting to see that first vote pass. But we know we need to follow this process of this review and voting to get this over with. There's been a lot of community support. Many large local businesses have shown their support by speaking up at town meetings and signing long-term letters of intent to provide housing for their employees. Even the CEO of the hospital recognizes the need and support for housing for nurses and other medical professionals. And residents, like you see here, have been showing up to multiple meetings to reiterate their support. So I'm asking again for your support to pass and approve this text amendment, and I appreciate the opportunity to provide feedback. Thank you.
Sean?
Sorry to jump up again. Sean Cole, Assistant Manager. I can't help myself. I just want to be clear that the Planning Commission is not being asked to pass the amendment.
Right.
They're not being asked about a project. They're just being asked, do they agree with the deviations that council made to what happened at Planning Commission in December of 2022 at the public hearing. Right now, I don't think there's any objection, so I just want to make sure that you're not being asked to approve or deny this. It will go back to town council for second reading with your recommendation, and that'll be the next step.
Understood. Thank you. Other citizens wishing to speak today? Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Matt Sweeney from Indigo Run. This has been a very painful process for both the developer and the town staff and actually the public. I'm afraid that this process has scared away several potential private developers who would otherwise try to help our workforce housing problem. I just want to reiterate what one of the other speakers said, that all of the changes that were presented here are changes that have been made at the request of the town. So this developer has really bent over backwards to meet the requirements of the town as best that he can from a commercial perspective, and he is not receiving a dime of government money for this project. I also am concerned about people getting bogged down with the discussions of AMI and the town trying to fit the square peg of this project into the round hole of workforce housing. There has been misinformation presented by the town in past documents, but that's not really your concern. Your concern is about the design, and I would encourage you to, based on the merits of this project, the larger setbacks, the preservation of the natural trees that are already there, the better FAR, just the better elements of the design compared to what's in the LMO, encourage you to pass this for evaluation by town council. Finally, I'd like to comment that 6 of the top 10 employers on the island have supported this project, including the hospital, and I think it's important that we meet their needs. Thank you.
Mr. Sweeney. Other citizens that would like to comment? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Cherry Norris. I live in Shipyard, and I just really want to reiterate what the other people have said and to thank you for accepting the proposal that the town has agreed upon with the developer. This is in my opinion, I don't even understand why there's been such long debate about it, because it seems to be a great opportunity and a win-win-win on so many levels. The college needs housing. This project furnishes that. Employers need places to put their employees. So this is a win for the employers who have gotten behind this project. The employees are in support of it. They don't want to drive from Bluffton and beyond to work at the beach. And as we know from the lifeguard business, if without housing, we have no lifeguards, and these people have to come in from all over the country. They can't be just hired locally because they have special training that they need. So I'm just going to say thank you for approving this and moving it forward. It's a big service for our community and a blessing to have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Norris. Anybody else wishing to speak? Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Ken Campbell. I'm a resident of Sea Pines, and I'm here to I probably won't get applause when I leave here because you will find an opposing opinion. I think I applaud each of you as residents of the island for volunteering for, you're not elected, you volunteers to look after the island and its zoning and what happens on the island. I am a supporter of workforce housing. I am a supporter of USCB. This is not, and I'm going to quote a mayor, I'm going to quote other people that are in council, virtually everybody in council, maybe not except for one or two. This is not a workforce housing project. So that should not be part of your consideration. This is a LMO amendment. It's been put before you for one reason, and it's one project. In our codes, in our state codes, there is a small parcel definition of zoning, essentially spot zoning, not called by that name in our state regulations. This is for one project. The project is not workforce housing. There are no units in there that are required to be rented below $132,000 for the household income for a family of four. Zero units. Look at the definitions. Missy, I think, should be able to confirm that. The requirement is you have to be 120% or lower on 20% of the units. That number winds up being $130,000 to $3,000 for a family of four. That's the only requirement that the developers put in. We have founders of Hilton Head Island, of our current development, started with Charles Frazier. They would be rolling over in their graves at the density that's going for one particular piece of ground, 500 feet, sure. A couple of others that can meet it if it's a education for young children, so this can happen anywhere on the island. I don't know the details of that. But just be very sensitive, please, as a planning commission. That's your job as a planning commission. This is not workforce. The university is giving up 34% of their parking in return for a 20-year period, might be 25-year period, that they can give the rights to their students to come over and rent space at rates that are comparable to housing to students throughout the university system. That's good. 34% of that parking. How is that university going to survive? If it doesn't survive, what happens to the use of that property? A third of the parking is being granted for a period of time, a short period of time, 25 years. We founded 40 years ago as a town. So be very sensitive to the planning part of this. I beg you. It is so much disinformation that this is workforce housing. Everybody says it's workforce housing. I've talked to one of the employers who has a letter of intent to have rights to bedrooms. They said, it's not workforce housing. We will rent at current rate, whatever the current rates are, and then we will subsidize our employers, our employees with that. That is not workforce housing. So this ordinance is meant for one project at one location, takes the density from 12 to 30. Please consider that and why it's being done for a private project with private incentive at totally market rates. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Yes, let me take the new speaker first, ma'am.
Good afternoon, John Casey, Indigo Run, very much in favor of this project. Private capital, in collaboration with the business community and higher education, have worked together to find mutually beneficial results, which also aid the town. They've reduced the number of bedrooms that they could place on this site from over 400 to under 300. Getting lost in the definition of workforce housing or worshiping at the altar of the need for government control when private capital is doing a better job is inappropriate. And I would urge this body not to get confused by that and lost in it, to follow what appears to be your inclination and to send this back to the council without changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Casey. Yes, ma'am?
Thank you. I'm Beth Patrick. I'm with the University of South Carolina Beaufort. And just for the record, I want to make sure that the council knows that USCB continues to be fully behind the project and supportive and appreciative of what we're trying to do here.
Thank you, Ms. Patrick. You've already had your chance. I'm sorry, ma'am. Both of you have. Anybody else who hasn't spoken to us yet like to comment?
I'm Lynn Fontaine, and I'd like to say I don't care what it's called. I don't care if it's called workforce housing. It's housing the workforce. Is it not called workforce housing because it's taking no government money? I'm confused by this whole thing, and yet the CCDC is called workforce housing, takes government money, and goes up to 150% AMI. And we get to call that workforce housing, but because this isn't taking government money, I'm going to end with what I said. I don't care what you call it, it's housing workforce.
Thank you, Ms. Fontaine. Anybody else? I don't see anyone else wanting to come through, so we will continue with commissioner discussion on the motion that's on the table. Any other discussion by commissioners before we vote on the motion?
I just want to make one comment, and even though it has been a lengthy process of 14 months or so, it seems as though there have been some improvements made to the overall initial language, so I think we've moved in the right direction.
Thank you, sir.
I'd say that I'd commend the builder, Charles Tiller, who's representing them. I mean, it's been a long process, and they've stuck with it rather than just given up and just walked away.
Thank you. Anybody else? Commissioner Mueller, Whaley, sorry.
Neely, look alike, right? I just want to say that, again, I'm new to this whole process, and when I did my homework, I was kind of surprised by the length of time this took. I guess if I were a developer and having done open corporate real estate campuses for my employer, that I'm kind of surprised where we are. And, I dealt in some municipalities which are very tough, like Maryland and places like that are not open to it. But I'm also a believer in competing conceptual frameworks. And I heard some people refer to a couple of other projects that are going on. And I'm of the opinion that adversarial alignment of projects is going to enable this town to understand competing models. And I think that engaging in that cooperative evolution so the town and their staff understand what works and doesn't work, maybe to not just simply to the benefit of the developer or the community, but I think we're going to have a stronger staff as a result of that. And I think you guys have been through a lot. I think you've done a lot of really, really hard work. I know that the town council probably has some work to do to iron out some details, whether it's parking or, big trees or small trees. But I want to just say thank you, Sean, and thank you, Missy. I mean, you stuck through this too. And I'm sure you have a lot of tire tracks on your back. And I wasn't here to start it off, but I hope I'm here to help bring it to its next step. So thank you very much.
Willie, anything else? Okay, I'm going to call the question. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Vice Chair O'Neill.
I did want to comment because I think that this issue, it's not, you can call it whatever you want, but this issue is just the first example of what we're going to have to deal with if, as a community, we're going to be successful in providing enough housing for the people that have the choice of working in Bluffton or coming onto Island. So I think this has been a good exercise, and I'm particularly impressed by staff, Missy and her team, by town council, because I know, there's not necessarily a right answer to this. There's only the answer that has less consequence to a smaller number of people. And all of those judgments have been tough, and none of them would have been possible without the developer coming to the table and willingly changing several, as we've seen, these
contingencies. And I just find that this is a good example and good practice for what we're going to have to go through over the next couple of years as we try to address this issue. So, I intend to support.
Well, the motion again, if as I understand it, is to forward on to town council our recommendation that all of the deviations that have been approved since the last time we've done it are.
Yeah, except that without condition, the,
Deviation.
when I'm wrong, except without condition, I make a motion to vote on, except without condition, the 11 items that have been sent to us and voted upon by town council without comment or change, right?
Deviation of the order.
Deviations. Right, we're just voting on the deviations, I just want to make sure.
Here it comes.
Yes, I think it's, the planning commission recommends supporting the deviations that have been before you, and that recommendation move on to town council.
Right,
I
the town
second.
council, yep, okay.
All right, and I second that.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Karen, would you call the roll?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Yes. Commissioners Campbell and Hens, please rejoin us here.
And they're back.
Yeah.
What? Yeah, I think it's street names.
I know, man.
I wish we did the street names first.
Yeah, I know. All of our,
For the whole thing.
all of the exciting stuff's about the
Exciting
start.
stuff, yeah. Okay, sorry, sorry, Joe.
Come back from the points.
Yeah. Oh, you're welcome. That's the
You know what?
developer.
I would have given up by now.
We still have some more items of business to go, so
Right.
let's continue on. We're moving on. Yes, if you're going to carry on a conversation, please do so in the lobby so that we can finish our meeting.
All right, good afternoon. I am Johanna Pfister, the Deputy Chief at Fire Rescue. I am here, we have 3 street names to bring forward to you today. And for some people that are new, you might wonder why Fire Rescue does the street names. It is because it's part of our 911 system, and we vet them and we do them in conjunction with the planning department. So the first one that we are going to bring forward is a proposed street name located at what is now 107 Lego Mutton Road. The street names are Cotter Pin Place and Halyard Drive. And they provide direct access to the subdivision, and there is a picture of what the subdivision is going to be. It is off Lego Mutton Road, and Cotter Pin and Halyard are part of boat names, things that occur on boat, which also is Lego Mutton, if you ever wondered why that was. But that is, they chose to use names that were in relation to a boat because they are adjoining to Lego Mutton. If you look through the staff report, we have vetted everything. We went through and checked to make sure that there's not duplicates in the county or in the town of Bluffton. We make sure that it is simple, logical, and easy to read and pronounce. That it is some way associated with Hilton Head or that portion of the location where it is. And we have vetted them all, and we feel that they meet all of the requirements to go forward and be approved by Planning Commission. And also, if you would like to see, we also have this is the area of the island where it is. Lego Mutton runs through here. And that is what the subdivision will look like. So one will be Cotter Pin Place and one will be Halyard Drive.
Any questions of
You guys
Ms.
have any
Ms.
questions?
Pfister on their staff recommendation? Commissioner Hens?
Probably not in any way related to naming of the roads, but just out of curiosity, are the cottages at Leg of Mutton, are they workforce housing or?
Trey Lyle, Senior Planner, County Hilton Head. These are not proposed for workforce housing. It's just 19 single-family detached homes that were proposed to us back in February, I believe, was when we first started reviewing this in pre-app phase.
Thank you. Other questions of staff or Ms. Pfister?
Just a point of information. Is this the same plan that came before us for
Yeah.
that parking thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
Yes, it is.
Just the open space.
Yeah, so this shows the I know it has nothing to do, I was just trying to.
Road B is the, I guess, the place, street, name. The top of the T.
Yeah, so it would be, I think they had proposed that,
I think it's Cotter Pin Place is the main road coming in, and then Halyard Drive is your Hammerhead portion of the street.
Oh, I just have another question. So is this wide enough? Like if you got to get really big equipment in there and turn it around back there, you're.
so the requirement is for the road to be at least 20 feet wide, which it is. And then the end treatment that makes the T is basically so we can pull in, back out, go back. So, yes, and so it is our intent going forward that street naming, when they bring forward the subdivision for you all to look at, that we would bring street naming with it as well. So like, it's not disjointed and you're not having to look at it twice. It just didn't work out that way for this one because we had to go back multiple times to get names because we had some conflicts with it. So, but going forward, we want to bring them as a joint so that you'll see it all together.
So just on the size, again, I'm educating myself, so just bear with me a minute. My commissioners. So no on-street parking's allowed then, so you guys can get through. So they're not allowed to park on the street.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, guys.
Any other questions or comments before we call for the roll? Okay, the motion would be to accept the recommended street names of Cotter Pin Place and Halyard Drive for these two things. Somebody willing to move that?
I move unanimous consent to approve the street name. Second.
Second. Okay. Aaron, would you call the roll?
Certainly. Mr. Hens?
Approve.
Campbell?
Approve.
Miller?
Approve.
Whaley?
Yes.
Dubois?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Thank you.
As well.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Derry. The second street, Johaida.
All right, so the second one is located off of Marshland Road. Currently, it is behind what is 7 Marshland Road. In this case, when addressing was done previously, there are not numbers left on Marshland Road. So in order to give the new home an address, we have to name its driveway. So the proposed name is Native Common. That was given to us by the applicant and the, trying to find her narrative. Okay, so her narrative was the proposed street name Native Common was chosen as the new street name honoring our long line of ancestors who were and still are on Hilton Head Island dating back to the late 1800s. It's crucial that we maintain our identity on Hilton Head Island amid rapid change and development. Native Common extends this identity and demonstrates that those who occupy 7 Marshland Road and the surrounding areas of the historic Gullah community of Marshland are natives of Hilton Head Island. Generations of natives exist on Hilton Head Island. The naming of this road is not only a representation of my family, but the other families on Hilton Head and the surrounding communities who are native people. We have vetted it and made sure that it is not a duplicate among the county. It's easy to say, and it meets all of the other criteria. So we would ask that on behalf of Viola Green that the street name Native Common is approved.
Is there any public comment on the naming of this street before we? Commissioners, any questions of Johaida?
One, is it Native Common Road, Street?
So because it is a access easement, it has criteria it has to meet, which is common, trace, and so that is its ending, Native Common.
Okay, is somebody willing to move? We accept the staff report for Vice Chair O'Neill moves, second by Commissioner Whaley. Karen, could you call the roll?
Certainly. D'Arienzo?
Approve.
Hens?
Approve.
Campbell?
Approve.
Miller?
Approve.
Bailey? Mr. O'Neill?
Approve.
Approve. One final one, right?
One final.
Commissioner Dubois also, it's unanimous.
Unanimous.
All right, so the last one is off of Katie Miller Drive. The applicant is Mr. Barnwell, Thomas Barnwell Jr., and we are recommending that you approve the name of Midwife Court for the new street. So that Katie Miller is down at the bottom, and this new subdivision would come off of Katie Miller. The name was chosen, the proposed street name Midwife Court was chosen in honor of Hannah Barnwell, who was the eldest child of Benjamin Walter White Sr., one of the largest farmers on Hilton Head Island in his day. Although he had only a 3rd grade education, he believed in education. Hannah was sent to Mather School in Beaufort and then on to nursing school in Columbia and became the first licensed nurse on the island and had a career as a nurse and a midwife. So they are naming it that in honor of her. And we have vetted it with the county and Bluffton, and it is simple, logical, and easy to read and pronounce, and it meets all of the other criteria that is in the staff report. So we would recommend that you approve the naming.
Thank you. Questions or comments by commissioners? Not, is there a motion to accept the staff report to name? I'm sorry, yes, is there public comment? Thank you. Is there public comment? No, is there a commissioner willing to move acceptance of this? Vice Chair O'Neill and Commissioner Miller. Karen, can you call the roll, please?
Certainly. Mr. D'Arienzo?
Approve.
Hens?
Approve.
Campbell?
Approve.
Miller?
Approve.
Wheeler? Whaley, sorry. Dubois?
Approve.
Mr. O'Neill?
Approve.
Approve. Thank you, Johaida. Appreciate it. Is there, there's no other commission business to come before us today, to my knowledge. Is anybody else who has an item that we need to take up today? Not. Are there any staff reports today that we need to hear? No, Shay? Okay. Then if there is no further business, the commission will stand adjourned.